Millets are not just food. They are an integral part of the culture of thousands of communities all over the country. In South India, the sorghum-growing Deccan areas of Telangana, Marathwada and North Karnataka use sorghum to bless their newlyweds. In many rites of worship across castes and religions, sorghum is revered as the principal ritual grain. Dasara, a major festival in the Deccan region, witnesses a unique celebration. This celebration makes testing seeds by women as an essential part of the festival ritual. Women observing the Gatlu ceremony bring seeds from different households in the village, mix them with soil and put them in front of the deities. Then they retreat into isolation and keep a steady watch over the seeds until they germinate. This is the traditional germination test for seeds, most of which are the millets. In the Endlagatte Punnam, the panicle festival of the Deccan, freshly cut crop panicles from the field are offered to the village goddess and then hung in decoration on the door front. Sorghum occupies a place of pride in this array of crops. Any food that is so deeply integrated into the culture of communities cannot be taken away from them. Development experts argue that denying such foods to those communities is a form of political oppression. In the vast Indian millet landscape, one can find a range of culinary delights. Each region has its own variation on the millet food theme. Sorghum bread, or jowar roti, is the most desired staple diet of the Deccan region in South India. In the western state of Rajasthan, bhati and roti made of bajri, pearl millet, rule over the rest. Sattu, the mainstay of the Himalayan diet, is made from finger millet. The unique Cafe Ethnic in Medak district of Andhra Pradesh, the only total millet restaurant in India, offers an amazing range of millet foods. Khichdi from foxtail and little millets, millet porridge, a variety of millet rotis, millet snacks and millet sweets. It's a virtual showcase of the gastronomical potential of millets. The capacity of millets, however, is not restricted to a restaurant showcase. They play a critical role in the food security of a large nation such as India. India cultivates a total of 143 million hectares of farmland. Of this, 92 million hectare is rain-fed. This forms nearly 65% of all arable land in the country. This vast dryland belt stretches across the Deccan Plateau, northern Karnataka, Marathwada, the deserts of Rajasthan, the tribal areas in central India and the Himalayas. This is the home of millets. They are the mainstay of agriculture, diet, and the cultural systems in these regions. But the beauty of millets lies in the fact that they can grow on extremely marginalized lands. This 1 acre of land on which Rayapalli Susilamma's entire family feeds has soil that is just a few inches deep. This is a marvel by itself, but that millets grow without any irrigation makes them truly miracle grains. These rain-fed crops account for 2/3 of India's cultivated landscape, and they support 40% of the country's population. An incredible 44% of the total food grains produced in the country are contributed by millets. In spite of such awesome credentials, these miracle grains have been condemned to the status of coarse cereals and therefore marginalized in the Indian pantheon of food grains. A consequence of this great injustice is the Indian government's public distribution system, PDS, which has completely ignored millets. PDS makes food grains available to the poorer sections of India's population at a cheap price. PDS engages with only two grains, rice and wheat, for its procurement and distribution. Millet is not on its map. The Indian rice and wheat farmers grow their crops on some of the most fertile lands in the country. Their lands get irrigated by perennial rivers through highly subsidized irrigation systems. They get seeds and fertilizers at prices discounted by the state. In addition to all these advantages, they also get a ready market through the PDS procurement system. The millet farmers, on the other hand, grow their crops on extremely harsh soils. Their lands are by and large unirrigated. They enjoy neither support nor subsidy for their farming. And finally, in the market, they are completely sidelined. This cruel marginalization of millets has taken a big toll on Indian dryland farming. Over the last 40 years, acreage under rice and wheat cultivation has climbed steadily. At the same time, the millet farming area has shrunk by an alarming 35%. Denied any incentive to cultivate millets, the farmers have let nearly 4 million hectares go fallow. Such a fallowization of its food lands in a country that has to strive hard to feed its billions is nothing short of a scandal. However, given a chance, the humble millet can herald the food sovereignty of the most impoverished communities. The Food Sovereignty Initiative of the Dalit women from the Deccan Development Society, DDS, is the finest example of this possibility. Since 1996, the women from a semi-arid region of Medak district of Andhra Pradesh have reclaimed more than 5,000 acres of farmlands which they had left fallow, but on which they have now started growing millets. In this process, they produce nearly 2 million kilos of extra grains every year. A part of the grains go to form their community grain bank, which is used to run an alternative public distribution system that is based on millets. This first millet-based PDS in the country feeds close to 50,000 families every year. Through their success story, the women of DDS have created an example to show how well millets can become a powerful tool for a new, vigorous, community-controlled food sovereignty in India. Juxtapose this with the current fallows in India, which add up to about 15 million hectares. If brought back under cultivation, they have the capacity to produce 15 million tons of extra food for the country. This can wipe out whatever food deficit we dread to envision for the next 50 years. Most millet fields are inherently biodiverse. This is the tradition of millet farming in the country. 6 to 20 crops are planted on the same space at the same time. The famous Baranaja cropping systems in the Himalayas are a testimony to this. In this millet-led system are embedded 12 different crop varieties. Sat Dhan in Rajasthan also is a host to a large variety of millets. The Pannendu Pantalu system of the south grow millets in combination with pulses and oilseeds, thus making it a holistic farming system. In such systems, millet cultivation does not only address the food security, but also translates into fodder, health, and nutritional security. Since much of the rain-fed farming tends to be ecological, it also gives rise to a unique phenomenon called uncultivated foods. In every cultivated millet landscape, each seed sown nurtures tens of voluntary plants. This means that 30% of the yield from the field is voluntary. In other words, they are not intentionally cultivated by the farmer. Most of these uncultivated foods form a wide variety of greens that offer food and nutrition to the poor. Why Indian policy makers have not discovered that millets are the only answer to the malnutrition that plagues the Indian poor is a big surprise. Malnutrition levels in India are worse than that of the sub-Saharan African region. This is purely due to the fact that the poor in the country are subjected to a rice diet through the PDS. Rice is full of carbohydrates and cannot offer good nutrition to the poor. On the other hand, millets are storehouses of nutrition. By any nutritional parameter, millets are miles ahead of rice and wheat. In terms of their mineral content, millets dwarf rice and wheat. Each one of them has more fiber than rice and wheat, some as much as 50 times than that of rice. Finger millet has 30 times more calcium than rice, while every other millet has at least twice the amount of calcium compared to rice. In their iron content, foxtail and little millet are so rich that rice is nowhere in the race. While most of us seek a micronutrient such as beta-carotene in pharmaceutical pills and capsules, millets offer it in abundant quantities. The much-privileged rice, ironically, has zero quantity of this precious micronutrient. In this fashion, nutrient to nutrient, every single millet is extraordinarily superior to rice and wheat, and therefore is the solution for the malnutrition that affects a vast majority of the Indian population. Most millets are also a solution to the fodder crisis that haunts India so very often. On every acre they are cultivated, sorghum and pearl millet produce nearly 1 ton of fodder. This can fulfill the annual fodder needs of 2 heads of cattle. A village that has 500 acres of millet cultivation can support nearly 1,000 cattle. Thus, millet farming can also offer fodder security to the livestock. This is a huge contribution to the animal wealth of a community. Another capacity of millet farming that is not often spoken about is the livelihood security it offers. There are calculations that each hectare of a millet farm supports about 50 person days of employment in ploughing, weeding, and harvesting. Even if 50% of the 92 million hectare rain-fed landscape of India is devoted to millet farming, it can support a minimum of 450 million person days of livelihoods per season. An amazing possibility from any angle. It is strange that this vital potential of millet farming has been so completely overlooked by the Indian policy makers. Another critical aspect of millet farming that is never discussed is its capacity to grow without irrigation. Compare this to rice cultivation, which the Indian planners constantly promote. Estimates tell us that to grow 1 kg of rice, 3,000 litres of water is needed. If true, this means that every acre of rice farming demands nearly 6 million litres of water. In other words, every acre of millet farm saves 6 million litres of water to the nation. For a water-starved country such as India, this is an awesome boon. Over the last decade, we have seen water wars all over the country. Neighboring communities have fought each other over water. States such as Karnataka are perennially in water fight with Tamil Nadu. Legislators in Andhra Pradesh have marched into neighboring Karnataka on the issue of water. India as a nation has water disputes with every one of its neighbors: Bangladesh, China, Nepal, and Pakistan. Therefore, India should gratefully embrace any farming system that spares the use of water. This prevents the country from hurtling towards a nightmarish water crisis. The latest crisis that faces humankind is the crisis of climate change. One of the features of climate change is the frequent occurrence of drought. This makes water more and more scarce for agriculture. Only the hardy millets have the strength and resilience to withstand such harsh conditions. On the other hand, rice farming becomes the first victim of climate change. It cannot sustain such water starvation. Added to it, rice fields which need standing water start emitting greenhouse gases such as methane. Thereby they aggravate the climate change crisis. Millets, which are normally grown under intercropping conditions, have legumes as their companion crops. Legumes with their abundant leaf fall make millet farms one of the finest carbon-fixing tools, and thereby turn into a wonderful answer to the climate change crisis. In the ultimate analysis, the humble millets are not so humble after all. They show us the way out of our food, fodder, nutrition, and water crisis. They have the capability to grow on the very poor lands of very poor people. They alone can withstand the harshest of climates in the arid and semi-arid regions and still offer food and fodder. They can stand up to the most modern crisis of them all, climate change. Seen from any angle, millets shine forth as the miracle grains.